Hello, and welcome to Mashable Reads, Mashable's social book club, where we bring together members of the online community with some of literature's most interesting voices. This month, we're joined by David Mitchell, author of The Bone Clocks. Thank you so much for joining us, David.
You're really welcome, Mashable folks. Thank you very much for having me.
So I'm sure anyone who's tuning in who actually hasn't read the book, you'll recognize David from books like Cloud Atlas and Number 9 Dream, and The Bone Clocks is the latest entry in a truly amazing body of work that we're really excited to be able to talk to David about today. So if anyone has questions while we're talking, you can tweet using the hashtag #MashReads, or you can use the Q&A app on Google Hangouts, which is located on this side of your screen. So let's start with a question from one of our readers on Goodreads. David, you've said that your books are contained in a larger Uber novel of sorts. Does that mean that readers, before reading Bone Clocks, should read your earlier works beforehand, or what would they gain from reading all those works in conjunction?
Well, thanks for the question. And thanks for the nice things you said about me in the preamble as well, Noah. Categorically, no. You don't have to read anything else I've ever written. That's the first clause of the constitution of the Uber novel. They're not prequels or sequels. You can pick one up without ever having read anything else I've ever written, and it will stand alone on its own 2 feet. However, if you have read some of my other books, then you will recognize a few of the characters, and those characters, of course, will bring their histories and autobiographies with them and kind of spill them out in the new book. So, so the books do work, but you don't have to have read my previous books, and you don't have to sort of know that shared history. But if you have read the books, then of course it's a bit like meeting someone that you kind of met a few years ago, as opposed to meeting them for the first time today.
All right, well, that's good. So don't be afraid if you don't have time to read 7+ novels before starting Bone Clocks. You can jump right
absolutely in. Absolutely no.
But once you finish reading Bone Clocks, you'll probably want to go back and read them. Another question from sort of our collective readership. I found a lot of the people reading Bone Clocks had really different reactions to some of the characters. So there were some readers who, didn't care for the Marinus chapter, but then there were some readers who wanted more Marinus and could have done without Crispin Hershey. So when you were writing in the voices of these different characters, did you anticipate that there would be certain readers who reacted differently to them, or did you hope that there would be a sort of different objective in combining characters who sometimes seem like they belonged in different novels?
To be honest, I didn't think that far. You can't really anticipate the plethora of different responses that you will get when you write a book. You can only try to make it work the best it can for you and on its own terms. It's a polyphonic novel, so it's not one voice the whole way through. If it's 600 pages, what's the opposite of polyphonic? Monophonic novel. It's going to be quite hard work. But yes, if you have different narrators, then some will be more popular than others with different readers. If you're not prepared to take that risk, and if you're not prepared for that reaction, then don't write a polyphonic novel. But I wanted to, and the Bone Clocks is what it turned into and how it came out. In a way, it's not so much prefer one character or another. This is in my experience after having spoken to readers of the book over the last 4 weeks of book touring. It's more, some people just aren't prepared to have any element of fantasy in literary fiction. And people in that camp objected to Marinus almost on principle. The laws of physics get bent there, and some people just don't want that to happen in what they're reading. The same way some people just don't want garlic in their food. But again, what can I do about that apart from not write the novel? But this is the one I wanted to write, and it's mine. I hope as many people as possible enjoyed it and weren't alienated, but the only way to not get up anybody's nose with what you write, the only way to not displease anybody is to never publish anything. And that's not really an alternative that would let me pay the mortgage or feed my children. So I've got to write and hope for the best. No offence, of course, if people, if this book isn't there, isn't a particular reader's cup of tea. They may enjoy other things I've written where the laws of physics don't get so conspicuously bent. But you can't please all of the people all of the time, as a wise American commentator on democracy once observed.
Yeah. No, that's great. MJ, do you want to take our next question?
Yes. So we had a reader question, but first, given what you just said about the fantasy elements and the different voices of the novel, if you had to give a very brief, sentence-long elevator pitch of the Bone Clocks, what would it be?
If I had to give a sentence-long...
Yeah, a sentence-long pitch of what the Bone Clocks is to a new reader.
I'd say good luck. I would jump out of the elevator, actually, rather than try and give a one-sentencer. It's a novel about the life of its protagonist, Holly Sykes. We see her at 6 different points in her life, from teenagerdom through to old age in the west of Ireland. Into that life erupts once per decade, once per section of the novel, a kind of a war between 2 groups of people who have negotiated or renegotiated the terms of their mortality. They don't strictly have to age and grow old and decay in the same way that us mortals do. Well, speaking for me, maybe you've done such a Faustian pact, MJ, I'm not sure. You certainly look young enough. But this war sort of happens in Holly's life, and in the first section of the book she's a fairly unimportant chess piece, like a pawn in this war, but by the end of the novel she's something of a decisive weapon. That, in several sentences, is my elevator pitch. What?
That might have been one sentence with a few clauses, actually.
Yeah.
Yes, clauses, semicolons, colons, dashes.
It was a good rambly sentence, and I love good rambly sentences. So.
Yeah, I'm a rambler.
Well, we also had a reader question from Genevieve de Guzman, who asks, the theme of reoccurrence and connection seems to be a favorite theme across your novels. In the Bone Clocks, several major characters that have appeared before previous novels appear in this book. What draws you to those themes and characters over and over again?
In a way, there's 2 questions there. There's the archetypal theme of connectivity or connection, and there is also why I have these character hyperlinks between my books. First one, writers do have archetypal themes. I'm not quite sure why. It's something to do with their nature and their nurture. They're different. Mine tend to be sort of this triad, I guess, of power and communication slash miscommunication, or an inability to communicate slash a connectivity. I mean, with a few beers and a couple of hours, I could sort of speculate as to why it's these themes that come back again and again in my work rather than any others. But we probably don't have the hours or the beers. I'm just interested in how the world appears to be made of connections, and how random or crafted connectivity is kind of the rocket fuel that powers reality. That floats my boat. I'm interested in that, and almost how can that not be interesting? It's fascinating. So maybe I'll leave it with that one. With the why I connect books with the characters. In the first instance, I started doing it because it amused me, and I hoped that it would amuse my readers as well. Secondly, I noticed that if you believe a character in book A and believe that world of book A is real, and that same character appears in book B, they kind of import that credibility to the world of book B. So there was a sort of a, I think the word is ontological reason for doing that. Ontological, I believe, being the branch of metaphysics dealing with creation. It's a great word anyway. Ontological. Ontology is the noun, and if you study it, you're an ontologist. I'm showing off, forgive me. Third reason, in order to create a larger book than any of my individual books. It's not that I'm making a Middle-earth or a Westeros kind of on a map in space, but I'm kind of making it book by book and character by character. Whenever a character from a previous book appears, or whenever I implant a character, say in the Bone Clocks, who will then kind of bloom in a later book, in the thing I'm working on now, or next, then this uber novel world becomes realer and more solid and concrete, and that excites me.
It's such a cool way to build a world. All of a sudden you have, when reading one book, all of these other actions and decisions informing your interpretation of what's happening in that character.
It beguiles me, and I'm, like a moth to a flame, we go where we are beguiled. This is not a great, big, deep, profound remark. It's just we go to whatever turns us on, I think, and this does it for me.
Yeah.
Awesome. I also had one kind of spoilery question for anybody who hasn't finished the book. I was just wondering what happens to Hugo Lamb. He's the narrator in the book, kind of a student turned like bad boy turned antagonist, and it kind of ends in a mystery for him in this book. And so I was wondering, are we allowed to know what happens to him?
Yeah, well spotted, MJ. Well, he's still out there. I mean, he the deal that allows him to cheat mortality kind of expires at the end of the 5th section in 2024, I think. So even though he was born in about 1967, in 2024, he's still about. He still apparently has the body of a young man, of kind of a 28-year-old, I suppose. And he will start to age now the deal is expired. But yeah, he's younger than he should be, and he's still out there, and he's the kind of bad boy, as you say, MJ, who tends to land on his feet. As people always do, don't they? So I will write a 3rd book. Not the next one, and not the one after that, but I think maybe the one after that. Very, very loosely. It's not really a trilogy, but 1,000 Autumns of Jacob de Zoet has Marinus in it on his 28th lifetime. I think in the Bone Clock she's on her 34th lifetime. I'd like to write a 3rd book with Marinus in a way at or near his heart. About 2-3 books from now, as long as I don't get hit by a bus or fall prey to some other catastrophe of a personal or global nature. I'd like to do a 3rd book, and I think in that one there's got to be a space for Hugo Lamb, because I mean, he starts off in the 4th book I did, Black Swan Green, as just a minor, precocious cousin who's only there for 1/13 of the whole book. Little did we know, little did I know, that in the Bone Clocks he would then become really the joint 2nd major character with Marinus, probably after Holly. So yeah, there's his story isn't over yet. I need to think about his character arc and one day incorporate it. So wish me luck.
Good luck. I
Good
look forward
luck.
to reading it.
Thank you.
I want to see Marinus again for sure. This is another reader question that comes from Twitter from Lynn P. Thompson. You already mentioned Middle-earth and Westeros. She wants to know what fantasy and science fiction books or writers you're a fan of, and if so, did they influence Cloud Atlas / Bone Clock's writing, and how so?
Probably indirectly more than directly. I mean, indirectly because as a kid I read Ursula Le Guin, and I still think she's wonderful. The Earthsea trilogy in particular. Then some golden age science fiction was in my diet as well. Excuse me, the Isaac Asimov Foundation books. That sort of 50s, 1960s, grand scale, operatic-sized science fiction enterprises. Tolkien was there as well, of course. I admire Neil Stephenson, who also has a great immortal in the form of a character I think called Enoch Root. Neil Gaiman, I think's great on several different levels. He's just a superb fantasist. I love his gift for concision, precision, both, I suppose. The way there are huge, great worlds behind these very slim books, but he distills them. That's the word I'm after. I admire his skills of distillation, and every word is kind of laser guided, and it's intelligent, and he can kind of anticipate the reader's objections and then anaesthetize them. And he's fantastic at stings in the tail. He's just a brilliant creator of plot. So when I read someone that good, and I read Neil Gaiman whenever he has a new book out, I just sort of think, ouch, how can I do that? And then I've been watching the box set of Game of Thrones on the TV, and again, George Martin's just a master of spinning many, many plates like this at the same time without ever dropping one. I mean, he's got 7, 8, or 9 plots going on at the same time, but they're so well juggled. He's just a master at that, and all of them are propulsive, and sort of every single scene ends on a cliffhanger. Every one. It's just great. Now, I don't necessarily want to do that, but I like the breaks as well as the accelerator. I like scenes where not much happens, but just where they may earn their passage because of their beauty or their thoughtfulness. But even so, to think about how George Martin just keeps all these shows on the road. It's not one show on the road, these shows on the road at the same time. To think about that is to sort of think about the anatomy of narrative itself, I think. So I do that, and again, that feeds in, probably indirectly more than directly, to how I write. What do you think? Is that a decent answer?
I think so. I definitely have some more books to add to my list after that, but MJ and I are already.
If you haven't read Ursula Le Guin, then read The Left Hand of Darkness and The Dispossessed. They're two fine, fine novels, and they prove that genre fiction can be intellectually engaging, and that it can be the home to a fine, fine stylist. Her sentences are beautiful, and it's genre. She's a great stereotype buster that genre fiction can't be for grown-ups.
Are those both Earthsea trilogy books?
No, they're science fiction.
Oh, okay.
There's sort of books where they sort of happen to be science fiction, but they just it doesn't matter. No, in the most respectful possible sense, I don't like this wall between genre and literary fiction. It's an imagined wall, and it doesn't have to be there. And in my utopian bookshop, there is no science fiction fantasy section. There's no horror section. There's just a good book section. And down with genre barriers. I should have that on a T-shirt.
I'll get them made. Send you one in Ireland.
Sign me up for a couple. And I can think of a few reviewers to send some to as well, but they probably wouldn't wear them.
All right. Okay, one more question that just came in from Twitter, from Emma Sheva. She says, David, have you been to all locations in Bone Clocks? I said yes because of the details. For example, the footbridge in Poughkeepsie. My friend says no.
Thank you for your question, Emma. You are right, and your friend is wrong. Yeah, I have been to all the locations. Don't think of any exceptions, but there aren't any. Gravesend, Rottnest Island. Oh, Switzerland. Nah, Switzerland. Now, I've been to Switzerland, but I haven't been to a ski resort. So your friend is kind of about 1/20th part right. She's 4 or 5% right. But everywhere else, actually, that town is a fictitious town, so we could get into an interesting ontological debate about whether it's possible to have not been to a town that doesn't exist. That's cool, isn't it? I mean, I haven't been to a ski resort, so probably, I mean, I think if I were a lawyer ruling on this, or if I were a judge being asked to adjudicate, then I'd probably say that Emma's friend has got me on that one. But on the other hand, can you go to a town that doesn't exist? I haven't even been to the type of town that does exist, so I'm rambling. But yeah, I've basically been everywhere, and even the college that Crispin Hershey teaches at the end of Part 4, that's based on Bard in upstate New York, and I've been there as well, so pretty much everywhere.
Well, I would argue that as the creator of the fictional town, only you could say that you have been there. The rest of us are interlopers when we read about it, but as the creator, I feel like you do have that right, if we were in court.
Thank you for the generosity of your ruling there, Nora. But even if it's true, then everyone is welcome. There are no immigration controls at the borders of my world. All you have to do is accept that you can bend the laws of physics in literary fiction, and you're very welcome in.
All right, I'll put that on my passport then.
Okay, do. You have an indefinite multi-entrance visa.
I'm afraid my connection's a little messed up, but I think you guys can hear me.
Yeah.
Okay, this is our final Twitter question.
Okay.
It comes from a user whose handle is SheltyP. Producing narratives that call attention to their own fictive construction is a reoccurring theme. Is it possible for a writer to ever escape creating dialogues about the medium they work in?
Phew. I think so. Does Jane Austen ever write dialogues that refer to the existence of novels or characters in novels? Well, Northanger Abbey kind of does, doesn't she? I mean, I think you could if you tried, but maybe a dialogue that is completely devoid of self-referentiality tends to be somewhat rare, because writers are writerly people. We write about things we're interested in. We spend big chunks of our working days concocting dialogue. So our minds are certainly contaminated by if you want to use that pejorative word, are interested in, or our minds are contaminated by an interest in dialogue and narrative and what we do as a compulsion and as a living. So I would agree they're probably somewhat there to try to find a long novel with no dialogue that doesn't contain any existence to the nature of dialogue. But then, you know, even when we talk, we sometimes talk about talking, like I'm doing it now. So maybe it's a somewhat unnatural thing to do anyway. Maybe it's a somewhat unnatural aspiration. We're human beings. We are Homo narratus. We're Homo communicatus. I mean, this is what we do. This is why we are, at least until some virus or global warming or the results of our intelligence and our somewhat self-polluting civilization takes us down. Until that point, this is why we're the world beaters. This is why we're kind of the apex predators. This is why we have bent the rest of the ecosphere to our own convenience. We're brilliant collectively, and we work very well collectively, and we can do this because we communicate. So I don't know, to sort of not talk about talking would be, I don't know, a bit like sort of never mentioning breathing or sexuality or work. It's just something we do a lot. So I'd agree it's there. I mean, maybe it's there in my books more than average, perhaps because I'm interested in communication. So if it's there in my psyche as a stammerer, as someone who has a stammer, and as someone who lived abroad for many years, where I was less than fluent in my temporarily adopted country of Japan. So it's often in the forefront of my mind. So it's in the forefront of my books as well. So it probably does seep into my dialogue more than some other writers' dialogues. Good question.
Yeah, I think I lied actually when I said that would be the last question from Twitter, because we just got one more, and I know that we've taken up a lot of your time already, David. So, all right, well then we'll do another one after that.
What? No. Just joking.
This question comes from Raul T. Vives, and he says, "How is your writing routine, morning/afternoon? Do you run? What keeps your mind going and concentrated on the job? And do you have any tips for new writers?"
Thank you for your 3 questions there, Val. Routine, I have kids. That's my answer there. And they kids are many things. They connect you with the universe. They straighten out some of your rough spots, and probably make a few other rough spots, but they straighten out more than otherwise. But they also are demolishers of routine. So, but that's fine, because at least I can write about kids these days, and the pram in the hallway is not the enemy of art. I don't really run, no. I'm on a bit of a fitness kick at the moment, so I use my cross trainer when it's raining outside, as it's about to be. It's about to start any time now here in Ireland. And I go on walks, and I do Pilates on Tuesday mornings that strengthen my core, which is useful if you spend your day sat down because your back gets weak. That's more information you needed about Pilates. And advice for young writers: just read some more. Think about why you like what you like, why you don't like what you don't like. Practice. Just write. Don't worry about writing enormous, great novels. It's not great to get published too early. Some people survive it, but a lot of writers don't. So there's no harm to take your time. Spend your 20s building up a compost heap of experience. Especially the things that you do when you're not writing end up being the most nutritious, chunky bits of decomposing future raw material for your books. It's things you think are getting in the way, like having to hold down a crappy part-time job or having to look after an unwell relative or something. It's these things that existentially enrich you. Sitting in your study or sitting in your back bedroom or sitting in your study room writing isn't actually enriching you as a human being. It's giving you practice in a craft, and that's worthwhile. That's worthwhile doing, but I think exclusively that's maybe not so great. To make sure you do things that are giving, or stay open to life experiences. Life will do this for you anyway. You can't avoid it, but maybe at least while you're still in your 20s, embrace that rather than resist it or resent it. And lastly, get your heart broken 2 or 3 times. That's very, very useful when you are writing about human hearts and their fragility and their bruisability. So kind of keep that, if you like, as a consolation. Oh, future writers of America. Whatever happens to you, you've always got this consolation, which is, well, at least I can write about it now.
That was an amazing answer.
Yeah.
That was great. Okay, MJ, I think we have time for your final question,
Okay.
if you want to go ahead.
Of course. So the entire book of The Bone Clocks is very literary sci-fi adventure, but the ending gets very political. And I'm going to be that person that reads a passage. My copy of the book's all marked up.
Wow, that's a really that was an intensely post-it noted copy there, MJ. I'm really flattered. Thank you.
I try my best, and it was a great book. So,
God bless you. Thank you.
But there's this passage where you write at the end, and this is in this kind of like futuristic world. It's the grief for the regions we deadlanded, the ice caps we melted, the Gulf Stream we redirected, the rivers we drained, the coast we flooded, the lakes we choked with crap, the seas we killed, the species we drove to extinction. I'm going to skip because it's a little bit long. The confronting liars we voted into office. Oh, sorry, the comforting liars we voted into office. Also, we didn't have to change our cozy lifestyles. People talked about the endowment like our ancestors talked about the Black Death, as if it was an act of God visited upon us. But we summoned it with every tank of oil we burned our way through. So
That's a bit bleak, isn't it?
that was very intense and very politically charged. And so I was just wondering what made you include that call to action and that political bent to the book.
Frustration, I suppose. Frustration with all of the guilty parties in that paragraph, and frustration with the fact that I too am a guilty party. I too fill my car up with diesel whenever its tank is empty. I too am a part of this civilization, and am a beneficiary of a rich section of it that is running up a tab that probably I'm not going to have to pay, but my children and my grandchildren are going to have to pay. And like you and like all of us in the rich world, we are the enemy. And what on earth can we do? We can become full-time activists, I suppose. Maybe our consciences would be legitimately clean there. But then how could I be a decent father for my kids? How could I be a writer? I'd be a full-time activist. You know, I'd be too busy growing cucumbers and potatoes in my back garden to ever do anything else. I too need energy that is clean and green and reliable and cheap, but that square cannot be circled. We can't have all of these things. I have huge respect for people who do throw their lives into this and who put their energies and their limited number of years as a human being into a direct attempt to change this fossil fuel burning course to a hotter, flooded, more volatile, less secure, dangerous world. But I don't have what it takes to be one of them. And the price I have to pay for not doing that is this ethical discomfort. I mean, I'm not going to be blind to it, and I won't put my head in the sand and deny that it's happening. And I won't tune into TV pundits who will reassure me that it's all a myth, or it's all the fault of the Chinese for building all their coal-fired power stations, or any of the other ideological painkillers that are available there. I mean, at least I'll feel the discomfort. It won't change anything, but at least I'll feel that and know it's there, and put paragraphs like that into my book.
Yeah. MJ, I'm so happy you read that passage from the book. It was one that really stuck with me too, and I'm sure a lot of other readers. David, thank you so much for giving us your time today. Is there anything you'd like to add at the end of our discussion?
I'd like to tell a joke, and for that gloomy paragraph, just to lighten the tone a bit. Can we each do a joke? I did hear a really good one. How many surrealists does it take to change a light bulb?
How many?
How many?
Fish.
But
All right. Well, that is a nicer, lighter mood to end on. So yeah, I just want to say thank you again to David from joining us all the way from Ireland to talk about this magnificent book. To everyone who read along with us, The Bone Clocks. If you haven't read it yet, please go out and do so for your own sake. And we hope that many of you will be able to join us next month when Mashable Reads kicks up again. So thank you again, David. This was wonderful.
Thank you very much for your time, folks. Really nice speaking with you, and thanks to everybody at home who watched this.
Right.
And if you get the chance to read my book, I hope you enjoy it. But if not, no offense. There's so many brilliant books in the world.
That is true. All right. Thank you, everyone.